Grand Rises World, bueno. Hopefully everybody is doing them in the most bona fide way that they know how. Hopefully everybody is taking care of themselves in the best way that you know how and doing the things that work for you, living a intentional, healthy lifestyle. Again, as I always say, hopefully everyone is doing them in the most bona fide way that you know how. In other words, living, with intention, living with good intentions, and just, doing the best that you can. And whatever that you do it proudly and, be the best at it, right? Even if, it's not the greatest thing or the best thing or whatever it is that you're doing, whatever it is that you have going on, that you are being the best that you can in whatever it is that you're doing, that you are taking pride in whatever it is that you're doing. And I say that because as I am recording this video, and the message that I wanted to get off of my mind, heart, chest, to get out of my spirit and to share, is the message of being accountable for your own life and being mindful, being aware of the things that you are doing and the behaviors that you are engaging in. More specifically, not doing things that you are ashamed of or things that you will later regret, right? Not doing things that in your private life will be reflective of things that you may be embarrassed about, or that you may be ashamed of, or that one may, be disheartened or, feel really down on yourself about if, someone was to find out about it, or, if it was exposed to the public and things. I wanted to make this video because, Mr. Combs, Sean Diddy Combs, as we like to call him, as the world knows him as, he is trending, in the media as per usual, especially being a high profile individual, and because of the things that he was accused of, and the criminal charges and things that he was convicted, that he was found guilty of or convicted on, right? So, I really didn't want to talk about him, but I feel like he is a perfect example of what I want to get into in this upload. So, there was a time when, and I'm going to share a clip of the video. There was a time, it was approximately a year ago, when P. Diddy actually was, he was on suicide watch in the institution where he was incarcerated at in Brooklyn, right? They had him on suicide watch because of all of the allegations. They said because he was a well, excuse me, I almost said something, because he's a high profile individual or high profile celebrity. But then also, when we actually when we take in account and look at some of the things that he was accused of, and a lot of things that the dark aspects of Mr. Combs, or this character, his demons, the skeletons in his closet. Again, the numerous accusations that have been put on or against him, the things that he has been accused of. Just say that a few of those things were actually true, that can draw one to go insane, right? There are a lot of people that they do things, they commit crimes, and they engage in behaviors, and they do it under the influence of a substance, whether that be alcohol, whether that be drugs. There is something that is influencing that behavior. So sometimes, a lot of times, when an individual commits crimes or engages in certain behaviors and is is caught right? Or is being confronted about it, when they come down off of that and they are no longer intoxicated, they either don't remember or they're a different person without it. And people who actually, people who has engaged and spent time with Diddy, they said that he's a different person when he wasn't on whatever his drug of choice was. They said that he was a different person. So, you know, it lets you know, and we know, for those of us that know something about people with substance abuse issues, or how, you know, having a substance abuse issue, or, you know, being under the influence of certain chemicals, whether that be drugs or whether it be alcohol, how it influences people and how it changes their psychology, how it changes their mental state. And, you know, ultimately it does bring out their demons or a different side of them where they don't have control. So when he is no longer being able to access the drugs or whatever it is that he used before, he was made to sit in an institution, in prison more specifically, and he had to literally face his demons. When people are under the influence, they engage in all kind of different behaviors and they commit all kind of crimes. And then, you know, as I said in previous videos, the part of the brain, I believe it's the prefrontal cortex, where, you know, it's the good reasoning part of the brain, where it tells you like, hey, I probably shouldn't do this, or, you know, this is not good, or, you know, it helps you in the reasoning process. A lot of times when people are overindulging in certain things, or even if they're just experimenting, some substances or drugs or whatever, what have you, is so powerful that it changes the chemical makeup of the mind or the mental state, where it is suppressed. So if a person is under the influence and they are engaging in certain type of behaviors, extreme behaviors, or, you know, lascivious things, or things that are absolutely taboo or that are absolutely unacceptable, their inhibitions are dropped, and then they can't make good judgment. And this is not for me to say these things for me to make an excuse for his behavior. I'm only bringing this part in, and I'm saying, I am addressing this part in the video so that, you know, I can talk about, I always want to talk about the why, or the reasoning as to why people do the things that they do, because I think that people who study human behavior, or who study or watch people, or try to figure out why we ourselves do the things that we do, or why other people do what they do, then all things should be factored in and all things should be considered. So in this case of, you know, Diddy, you know, he was heavily on drugs. So when you are made to go into an institution, or you are incarcerated, you don't have the access to those drugs. So he has to face his demons again in his sober mind. And in his sober mind, everything probably began to come back to him. I'm going to assume and think that it's all safe for us to say that everything started to come back to him, and he probably lived a year ago, and even up until this present moment in time, he probably still lives with deep regret for the things that was exposed, the things that he was accused of, the things that is evident, things that were proven, things that were documented, all of the things that were exposed. You know, it's not the same state of mind, right? So that would be one of the reasons why, you know, he has to be on suicide watch, considering all of the things that he has done in his past that is now haunting him present day time. So that leads to where I'm going in this video message. What are people doing in their lives that it does not align with who they say that they are outwardly, right? So if a person is presenting themselves a certain type of way outwardly, but in their private life, you know, it is reflective of something of quite the opposite or the contrary, or something that is would be relative to being an oxymoron. I think that that is very problematic. When you have talents and gifts, and in this type of situation, when we're talking about artists and artistry and celebrity, right? When you have a certain type of talent, or you have certain gifts, or you feel as though you are great and you have a certain type of greatness, our souls want to express that, and it wants to outwardly release that. It wants to express itself, it wants to experience itself, and we want to see that, rightfully so. But how many people have the same story as Diddy, right? And then, of course, as we know, and the accusations and all of the things that's been exposed, he absolutely traumatized people and created more of himself in other people, where he has certain talents and gifts, and he gets into an industry or get in front of managers and people in certain positions of power that can give him the things that he desire. And then what we would have to what I think is important is being able to be aware of your boundaries, your morals and standards, being able to say no when necessary. But when something is dangled in front of you, and there are different temptations, whether that was temptations with women, whether that was temptations with money, power, greed, all of these things. You give a person a little bit, then you give them an inch, they take a mile. And then they give you a little bit, the enemy or the devil will give you a little bit, and then you take that, and then he keep offering you more and more. But the thing is at what price? At what price or expense do you give of yourself, or do you sell your soul to obtain the things that you desire? Because one thing that people miss, or they overlook, or fail to realize, is that while you think that your desires is just a secret unto yourself, the devil, the enemy, also knows what your desires are, because the enemy will study you more than you study you. So sometimes the enemy may know you more than you know yourself. So what are your boundaries, and what if he had self-control, if he had discipline, or if he even had boundaries, or people that was more of righteousness that was able to guide and lead him? And again, this is not an upload to, this is not a video to try to coddle him, or to try to baby him, or try to make an excuse for the things that he did. I'm going somewhere with this, and I really have a deep point in all of this that I'm saying, but I have to break it down, because I am I'm very analytical in that way, and I want to make sure that I'm touching on all points. So when you have a certain level of greatness in you, or talent, or something that the world wants or the world likes, and you have people in positions of power that can help you to obtain the things that you need, where is the part where people literally draw the line and say, no, I'm not going to sell my soul for this. I'm not going to compromise myself for this desire. I'm not going to compromise my integrity so that I can obtain A through Z. And some people will say, if they are tempted with millions of dollars, and they start to spend their money, the money is already spent in their mind, and they think of all the people that they can help, starting with their family and charity, and just going all the way down the line with the things that they can do with the money, or how much fun and how their desires are being fulfilled, being with women, if that's what he desired, right? Or the power that he has had over the years. All of these things were given unto him, but at what expense and what price? So his private life, or what he thought was his private life, because he had these parties, he had these events, he had people that joined in on that. Then they took the cell phones, and then there were some things that was documented, and then he just thought that it was something that was just going to remain isolated and amongst the people who attended, and then specific to the time and date that it happened, and that was that. But now what the world gets to see is how his demons, his skeletons, and all of these things is being exposed. And then he gets put on suicide watch because he's embarrassed, because he feels extremely down on himself about the things that he's not only being accused of, but the things that he know that he has done. But what about the things that he has done that hasn't even been exposed, that he knows that he has to live with, right? That's another thing. So I made a video a while ago and I was saying, you know, are you doing things that you are ashamed of? Why it's important for you not to do things that you are ashamed of. If your private life is not reflective of something that is honorable, or if it is reflective of something that if someone was to find out or expose you on, or to tell the world about, is that going to break you? Can you live with that? Can you live with yourself? Can you live with that? And can you look at yourself in the mirror if whatever your skeletons is, because I'm pretty sure as humans, we all have them, whether they be something small or something, you know, larger, whether it's something that we did when we were kids, when we were younger, or something in adulthood, right? Because nobody is perfect, but then on what level? And again, current day time as an adult, because, you know, it's one thing to do things when you're a child or you're a kid or whatever, and that's like a, you know, a time, and you have your time for learning, and you're making mistakes and things. But then when you're an adult, and then you are leading a lifestyle that is, you know, contradicting. It's contradicting to, you know, how you want the world to see you. Because at the end of the day, for the best of us, we want the world to see us in a positive light, or, you know, we want the world to see us in a certain type of way. So there's the private life, then there's the life that you expose to those that's really, really close to you, and then there's the life that is, you know, what you want the world to see. What you want the world to see, what you exposed to those that you confide in, and you know, the intimate parts, those intimate parts that you share with the people who you feel comfortable being intimate with. And then there is your absolute private life that only you and another person, say the Most High or God, you know, the divine, knows about. So, you know, it's very important that whatever we do in our current day time, and especially as an adult, is there something or some things that is so bad that you wouldn't be able to live with yourself if someone felt as though they had the power over you, or they had the ability to be able to go into your life, and then they was able to expose certain things because they were being vindictive, because they were being cunning, conniving, or because they had you know, a motive, or even if it's not even on that level of somebody that is just a hater. And I'm not saying that this is what happened with Diddy. Diddy is reaping the benefits of the seeds that he has sown, is what we're seeing. So when everybody is coming out saying the things that happen, and then people are talking about, oh, 50 Cent, he's a snitch. I guess Ja Rule said, oh, he's a snitch, or different people said that he was a snitch or whatever, because he made this documentary about Diddy, and for whatever reason, whether he did it for the culture, whether he didn't, whether he did it for personal reasons, or for whatever reason he did it. And I think that rightfully so, it was something that was bound to happen, because nobody put Diddy in this situation but himself. And when people get a certain level of power and money, that's where the friction and the problem come into play. Because what happens is people get a certain level of power and a certain level of fame, and then they forget who they are. That, you know, you may be, and I'm not even saying all of us, because I was going to say you may be an extension of God, but everybody that is walking amongst us is not representing God or an extension of God. Some people are absolutely the epitome and the representation and in the energetic frequency on a day-to-day basis of Satan himself, or the devil, if you will, whatever you want to call him, right? So I can't really say that he is a representation of God. I actually believe quite the contrary, through and through. But again, when you get to a certain level of fame and power, people let it go to their head, and then they start to think that they can't be touched because they got away with one thing, and then they get away with another, and then they get away with another, and then another, and another, and another. You know what we call that, right? We call that a repeated offender. So this is what I feel, in my personal opinion, what we are seeing, and that is why he is being exposed in the way that he is being exposed. So this is a lesson, right? This is one of the big lessons for people such as Diddy, or the many other Diddies, or the people in the industry or whatever, who do things behind closed doors, and then it's like they want to clean it up. Either they want to lie about it, or a lot of people, what we're also seeing is a lot of people coming out and they're starting to kind of tell on themselves, and they're kind of trying to expose stuff before other people can, right? So it's kind of like Ray J. He's like kind of trying to tell people that he's kind of trying to tell people that he may be interested in men, or that he might be bisexual, and then there's plenty other people like Ray J, like or Orlando Brown. He absolutely exposes himself all the time, and talks about how he has engaged with men. And if that's something that you're proud of, we can only respect that. If that's what you're proud of in your private lifestyle. But again, if you're doing stuff in your private lifestyle that if it was to get out, that you are going to lose yourself mentally, or it's going to cause you to no longer want to be here, but to want to off yourself or whatever, that's a problem. So what I say is, whatever it is that you're doing, to be proud of whatever it is that you're doing. And if whatever it is that you're doing you're not proud of, or it's something that you're going to be ashamed of later if it was to get out, then you might want to change whatever it is that you're doing. And if it is something in the past that maybe you need to atone, or you need to repent, or you need to forgive yourself or forgive others for, then that's absolutely necessary. But there's so many people that have issues and traumas in their life because they have issues such as the topic that I'm talking about, things that they are a prisoner to, that has chains on their minds, that has chains on them, period, and that they really can't live with themselves with. We talk about celebrity because they're in the spotlight, they're in the limelight, and a lot of their skeletons, their dirty laundry and everything gets exposed the easiest. So, one thing that we see is, there is a lot of, drinking, partying, self-medicating, which leads to substance abuse. Because the fact of the matter is people can't live with themselves with some of the behaviors that they are doing and the things that they have done. So when we see people spiraling, and we see people who they seem as though they're on the fast track to, to being on the other side of the dirt, you know what I mean? When we see people who are spiraling because they remain intoxicated because of the things that someone has done to them, possibly in their childhood, or the things that they have done, the things that they have witnessed, but the things that they also have partaken in and engaged in, some of the most unspeakable things. And I think that the whole Diddy situation is just a small part of it, because we have to remember and acknowledge that there's a lot of people who was in those same rooms and those same places and spaces and events that he was holding, right? And then there was a lot of people that was doing some of those same things. But there's just some people who their dirty laundry and their skeletons and all of their, you know, all of their BS has not been aired out. But a lot of people's have. And then again, like I said, there's people like Ray J who wants to try to, you know, say certain things to try to, you know, reveal certain things before, you know, people try to expose him, if you will. So, you know, when I started the video, I was talking about being accountable for your life and being accountable for the moves that you make and the behaviors and the things that you partake in. Because all in all, when we talk about sovereignty and having autonomy and really trying to be the author progenitor of your life and taking full responsibility and control over your life, you want to move and have a move in the mind state and ways and intentions of accepting our own BS. And that's not to say, oh, well, you know, when you're doing introspection or you're doing whatever self-work or shadow work that is for you to have to expose to the world or put everybody in your business. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is to take responsibility and to have, you know, the control and power over your own life, because you don't want to move in a certain type of way where you're giving people the power and authority over you to play with you like a pawn or a fiddle, or to have something that they're holding over your head. Because when you are in debt to your enemy, you remain in debt to your enemy. That's why it's good to not even be compromised in the first place. We have to have boundaries, period. The enemy will come and the enemy will test you, especially when you have talents and gifts and when you are an asset and when you are valuable to the world. In all honesty, I feel as though, I must say this, I don't feel as though some people are just the most talented. I feel like if you ask a sister like myself, if someone was to ask me and they really want to know honestly how I feel about, you know, Mr. Shakur, about Pac, and then, you know, P. Diddy, I would say hands down that Pac has way more talent than P. Diddy does. But same thing with Big, you know, same thing. I think that Big was highly talented. I think that, you know, Diddy, I just don't see him, you know, as being like really just like a huge sensation. I think that people, they feed off a certain pure and just raw talent, and they feed off of certain valuable people, and, you know, they are able to bubble. They are able to reap the benefits of that. But when you talk about raw talent and what's like, you know, really a real gift, right? There are those who come amongst us who are curses, and then there are people who are genuine gifts. I think that Pac was a genuine gift, and I think that for anybody to try to put him in the same category with P. Diddy, I think that is quite offensive. I mean, at least to me anyways. I think that is very offensive. You know, Tupac and Diddy are not the same people, right? I think anybody who is really aware and who has common sense, and then those who are really tapped into hip hop, and those who, you know the artist, know Pac really well as an artist, and then, you know, analyze P. Diddy as an artist, they're not the same at all, right? So back to what I was saying about what are people willing to stand on. You know, my mother used to tell me, and I say it all the time because it replays in my head, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. So when it comes to our desires, the things that we want to do, the people that we want to network with, the people that we want to do business with and things, if a person offer me the world, or they want to give me or you, you know, the things that you want in exchange for something, because at the end of the day, it should be, it usually is in any balanced relationship, connection, or business, whatever it is, it's one hand wash the other, right? So if someone is giving you a service, they're going to expect something in return, right? So what can we offer to the people who we're going in business with, who we're going in partnership with, or who we're networking with? And what is it that you're willing to stand on, that you're willing to say, no, that's a boundary, and I'm not willing to compromise myself in this way or that way or whatever? What is it that we're willing to stand on? Especially even in our adulthood, because you best believe that the enemy knows your desires and your wants and is willing to offer you the opportunity to obtain those things in which your heart desires. And it should be in exchange for your services, such as your strengths, your talents, your gifts and things. But unfortunately, we live in a world that prey on people. And if you don't assert yourself and you don't make it very well known that you're not willing to sell your soul, someone will try you. And even if you do assert yourself and you make it very well known that you're not the individual that's going to be played with, toyed with, and is not going to be, their integrity is not going to be compromised to obtain the things in which their heart desire, or even the things that they need for that matter, right? Because the devil comes in all kind of different forms and fashions, in all kind of different ways. And if you don't pay attention, you can get blindsided too. And it happened with people all the time. Even these young folks, right? These young folks that have came into the industry or whatever, and then also having discernment and wisdom and being aware and being able to notice certain things, because there's certain experiences where you may be being tested by the Most High, even on a small level. So in a day, like your day-to-day friend, person, or whatever, you're doing business with the person and you're like, we have similarities and we have commonalities, and we're similar in this certain type of craft and talent that we both partake in. But your energy and how you express yourself, and even how you regularly speak, your vernacular is very different than mine. Our frequencies is very opposite of each other, but we can, collaborate really well, maybe on some music or in different ways in business or whatever. So you agree to engage and partake in music, for an example, and in that way. But someone that you are networking with or going in business with may have ulterior motives or may have certain interests that you don't. Are people able to assert themselves and literally say no? As grown people are going to do what they want to do. And I know some people say, well, if you say you're going to do what you want to do, then that's like do what thou wilt, and that's what doing like satanic stuff, or that's doing Luciferian stuff and doing this and doing that or whatever. I think on certain levels, I think there's certain levels and layers to everything. I think that, as I said in previous uploads, we should do the things that make us happy, but that also comes with a great deal of responsibility. I am not the type of individual who, left religion to say I am spiritual so that I'm not held accountable. We all have to be held accountable, and, especially because at the end of the day, the way that I operate is that I always have the Most High to answer to, but I'm not going to come into any other spiritual system. Or for example, I am interested in, African spirituality. I'm not going to leave religion just so that I can be, felt as though I am being controlled or being in a certain type of way where it is going to make me compromise myself, who I am as a person, or make me feel as though I'm going into another system that is going to make me a slave or want to have total control, right? Because another thing that we see is that the whole patriarchy, and this is not a whole feminism thing, but this is something that I think that is important to mention in the whole patriarchy thing. You know, some men like to use certain things and have used certain things such as religion and these different spiritual institutions to try to control women. And we have seen that as well, right? So whatever people are doing, I have said, and I'm going to continue to say that, you know, hopefully you are walking with the intention to be sovereign and to have autonomy, but having enough wisdom and discernment and being able to recognize certain things so that you may remain on the path of righteousness, not the path of perfection, because that is just not something that is attainable, but doing the best that you can, right? As I always say, hopefully you're doing you in the most bona fide way that you can, so when you're going and you're coming, that your intentions are righteous. You know, a lot of people, we come here to experience and we want to enjoy and we want to have fun. And we should. But as I always say, and as I would say to anybody, we have to be very responsible and be very aware of what it is that we're doing. How we're doing. Just everything that we partake in. If people are doing things that is going to, you know, they're going to later regret, should probably, you know, rethink that. And then also, you know, having, you know, even though, you know, we like to have fun, right? People like to have fun. Keeping dignity in mind, but then just having some level of reserve or restraint, because even though people want to have fun and they want to do the things that make them happy, some people, there is like no shame in their game, right? There's no shame whatsoever, and it's like you see what they're doing and how they're doing it, and you just feel, it's like you feel embarrassed for them, right? So it's one of those things too. But you know, wisdom comes with life experiences, right? And then also having good people around you and people that can, you know, help to rear the children. People that, you know, have good leadership, good people in their life. And unfortunately, you know, in our communities, that's not always the case. There's a lot of people who were misguided as children, and people in their grown age that are still being very much misguided. So they don't know, and people, they just don't know. And there's so many people, they're just so lost. So yeah, enjoying life, doing the things that make us happy, knowing when to turn a turn up on and knowing when to turn down, when to turn it off, you know. But then also having some type of dignity about yourself, because too much of anything is not good. And for people to praise and glorify some of the most extreme stuff in the culture that really should be left amongst adults, it's just, it's ridiculous. And that would be the reason why, you know, people who, you know, really young men and women, they do certain things for attention, and they do certain things for monetary gain, if you will, because essentially they're doing the things that the culture is glorifying, right? So, you know, when we talk about the experience that people want to have and having fun and doing adult things, there's different things that we have to be accountable for, be aware of, and just really have to be careful, because there's a time and a place for everything. You know, I think for the best of us, most of us, we want to have fun and we want to experience. But there is levels to this. And then, you know, there is you know, responsibility with certain power, and money gives free, money supplements freedom, attaining freedom. And, you know, there's certain level of power, but with those certain levels of power comes certain levels of responsibilities. And then people think that, you know, a lot of people like Diddy, they think that they can do certain things, and even, you know, when it comes to NDAs or whatever it is, and they think, oh well, no one will find out. And then 10 years pass, or however many years pass, and then people find out, and then now you're on suicide watch. So does your private life, or the things that you have done in the past, are you a slave to the things that you have done in the past? And are the things that you have done in the past and the things that you do in your private life currently, is it reflective of something that is going to break you, or make you want to end yourself if the public found out, or if someone found out about it? So anyway, that was my message. You know, there's high rates of suicide and depression and substance abuse, and all of it go hand in hand. And there's a lot of unspoken things that are taking place, and people are going through a lot of stuff that they're not necessarily talking about. You know, they're not taking their lives for no reason. Some people say, oh, they do that, and even in an attempt, they do it for attention. Even if that is true, there is something really dark and really deep that is hidden behind that. And what is that? So again, I just wanted to put something on, you know, on people's minds. We all have to be accountable for the type of lifestyles that we live, even when we want to have fun, even when we want to express different aspects of ourselves, because I believe that we're all entitled to that. But just remembering that whatever it is and how you moving, we all have to give an account of whatever it is that we do, even when we think that no one is looking. So I think that's all I'm going to say for now. I hope you guys have a beautiful day and stay well. Ashe.